And welcome into another episode of Tiger Territory, part of the Foul Territory Network, a Detroit Tigers podcast. I'm Kieran Steckley. With me, as always, the man who had player options. Then he got a girlfriend. He is Cody Stavenhagen. How you doing?
Doing good, Kieran. We are here to talk about one thing and one thing only. Alex Bregman. It's over, and he's a member of the Boston Red Sox. It was about, 10:30, 11 last night. Notification pops up, and I saw Red Sox. And then I saw 3 years, 120, and that was definitely enough to get a reaction. Shorter term than we would have thought, and higher AAV than we would have thought. And shortly after the Tigers offer comes out, I got that number confirmed, 6 years in excess of $171 million. In a way, that's the most shocking number because the Tigers offered 6 years, which we never thought they would. They did it. They offered a fair annual value, and they didn't get them. If you would have told me probably at any point after winter meetings the Tigers offered Alex Bregman 6 years, I would have said they're going to get him. They did what I didn't think they would do. They made a fair, aggressive offer. They lost out to what's also a really attractive offer, $40 million a year. We can debate what Bregman's decision may have came down to. We don't quite know that yet. We may never get, the full insight into his mind. You can probably guess Fenway Park versus Comerica played a role here. You can probably guess maybe the guy just liked Boston, the prestige of the Red Sox. The Red Sox are giving him opt-outs after each year in this contract. The Tigers offered an opt-out after 2026. They did not include an opt-out after 2025. That may have been a sticking point. But there's probably a combination of all these factors. A little strange. Like, in a way, you can come away from this like, well, we can't sit here and really knock the Tigers because they exceeded what I ever thought they would offer. At the same time, now they're moving forward without Alex Bregman, and it's fair to have some legit concerns about this team and its offense.
Yeah, so obviously a variety of ways to kind of react to it. Sticking with the 3 for 120 and the opt-outs, I can't say that, like, one of the things that I was prepared to talk about was Alex Bregman taking a lucrative offer, and there's a couple ways it could be lucrative, but a lucrative offer to a lesser situation or something that you could pretty clearly see that he just took it for the money. That, as sometimes that happens. This is not that case. He took a lucrative offer, a optionality even offer from a great situation over there in Boston. He hits 360 at Fenway. His power is going to come way down, I think I read, but he's just going to be a doubles machine. And he's gonna rake. He's gonna rake in Fenway. He does have to play second base. That's come out. He's gonna be playing second base. And if you're the Boston Red Sox, there's no downside to offering and being the acceptant of a 3 for 120 deal because you're gonna block your prospects. Well, not really. I think it stands to reason Alex Bregman is going to exercise one of those two player options, and even still, it's only 3 years, right? Number two. It shows, we talk about fans in Detroit wanting the team to spend money. That's been a common complaint for a couple of years now, basically before Mookie was traded, of the Boston fan base. So this is them showing that they are willing to, spend. You're the Boston Red Sox. You should be spending money, and that this is a victory for them. I think if I was Bregman, I would even take the Parks out of it for a second. I would take 3 for 120 with the opt-outs more than I would take 6 for 171 with the two opt-outs in there. Right, it was 2 opt-outs total after 20, or just one opt-out.
The Red Sox offer?
No, the Tigers.
The Tigers offer had one opt-out.
One opt-out. Okay, I didn't know if there was one later in the contract.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So my mistake. One opt-out. To me, it seems like a pretty easy decision because you're still going, we know how inflation goes, right? These prices are only going to go up, and he's going to get the ability to get probably more money after this Red Sox deal, whenever it is, than what he was getting right now. So to me, it was kind of a no-brainer for Bregman to take this. It was a no-brainer for the Red Sox to sign off on this. And to be honest, for the Tigers, it was an impressive showing. And sometimes you lose. Sometimes you do everything right and you lose out. And this is the case. When we tell tall tales about the Mike Ilitch era and the spending era, we don't include guys that they may have offered lucrative contracts for that didn't take them. Right. So, like, if we're romanticizing that aspect of Mike's tenure, this deserves some sort of romantic aspect of the Chris Ilitch tenure because we had not seen him the desire or the wherewithal to do something like this. And same thing with Scott Harris. I could only imagine his heart beating and sweat coming down his eyebrows as he offered a 6-year contract to someone north of 30. All right. So, kind of give him credit for that. I wanted, before we kind of get to like a wins and winners and losers thing here, Cody, I did want to bring up one point that I haven't seen people talk about, and maybe it's invalid. And if you have talked about it, if you have tweeted about it and I missed it, I'm sorry. I'm not plagiarizing here. I think if there's a criticism of this offer from the Tigers based on what we know, it's the opt-out after year 2. Why is that important? Number one, if your main competition is giving the opt-out after year 1, then you're at a disadvantage if you're not willing to go there, right? Number 2, the current collective bargaining agreement expires December 1st, 2026. Last time we had a work stoppage, all right? I don't get good vibes right now, good indications of harmony in CBA notions right now. It's not that long. It's 2 years. It's not that long from now that we could be staring down the barrel of another work stoppage. If I'm Alex Bregman and if I'm Scott Boras, I want as much leverage as I can before something like that happens. And I mean, there's not going to be a salary cap. The players would never agree to it. But if there's anything weird that goes on, maybe a heavy, all these things that could happen in a CBA negotiation, I want as much leverage as I can before that. So I think that could have been a real sticking point for the Bregman camp, is that they don't want to be beholden to a potential work stoppage and all the complications that come from that when they have an opportunity to maximize their value again. So the CBA, I think, kind of loomed over their thoughts on this. So any thoughts on that?
It certainly may have. That's not a take I had heard. That's certainly an interesting thought. A work stoppage doesn't necessarily mean players aren't going to do well. Marcus Semien and Corey Seager are Boras clients and did incredible before the last lockout, and the Tigers gave Javy Baez 6/140. So I don't know if that would have played into it, but it would certainly be something that the Boras camp would have to consider. I do find it strange the Tigers weren't willing to give that offer. We talked about this a couple episodes ago. Would you want Bregman for 1 year? It feels kind of like the old one and done in college basketball. But it's like, sure, why not? I was told they wouldn't do the opt-out. Not they didn't, they wouldn't. But I don't necessarily want to harp on this too much because we don't quite know the full story of how these negotiations went down. It may or may not have actually been a big sticking point. It just does seem a little bit odd. Another question we don't know the answer to, how long had the Tigers had this 6-year offer on the table? If they're offering this in November, would it have been done? I don't know, but that's a question I certainly have. Again, you just can't come on here and knock the Tigers. There were many points in this offseason where I thought the Tigers would not get Bregman, and especially if they held out their entire offseason for some 4, maybe even a 5-year offer, that was going to be worth criticizing them. But they ponied up a big offer. I do wonder how long that was on the table, because if they weren't that serious until the end of negotiations, it might change how we frame some other things they passed on. At the same time, I kind of get – I think Ha-Seong Kim is the one guy I wish maybe they would have turned to. And theoretically, he was cheap enough. You could sign Kim and not be out on Bregman. Kim could play shortstop. We could go down a million rabbit holes here. Where they're at, it's probably best to focus on going forward. Where they're at now, they don't have Alex Bregman, and they have very few other options. And it kind of raises that question, is this lineup going to be good enough to get the Tigers back into the playoffs?
So that's the question that will probably forever go unanswered is, was this approached as a Bregman or bust offseason by the front office? Because, like, without the in-depth knowledge and inner workings over the past several months, if you had the most lucrative offer on the table for the guy and you had made no other additions in the realm of which that he would perform for you, it makes it seem like it was Bregman or bust. And there wasn't any, as I often
And
said,
that would give validity to the thing we've heard for like a long time now, which is like the Tigers felt good about that offer. Felt good about their offer. We didn't know what that meant for forever, but now we do. Now I understand why they felt good about it.
Yeah, and there was no, like, hyping up of like the Jace Youngs of the world. Like, it seemed like there was a holding pattern out for this, and you could argue the Red Sox didn't need Alex Bregman, so they kind of came in and kind of saw an opportunity. And if you look at their additions this offseason, it's an impressive list while still having Baseball America Tiger 30 for any annual subscription, for 30% off any annual subscription. Baseball America has them number one farm system. So, like, Boston's in a really good spot right now. I still feel like the Tigers are in a good spot overall. I would have been fine with the 6 for 171. There would have been reservations, but I would have been fine with it because it gets your guy. Now, any pivot, there's nothing to pivot. This past summer, Cody, I applied for a job. I had like 3 series of interviews. And, I didn't get it. And you asked me, it's like, how do you feel? It's like, well, I mean, I'm obviously disappointed, but there's nothing, something I ever had. So like I didn't pivot to my current job, right? The Tigers aren't right now, as of right now, aren't pivoting to anything. They're rolling with what they've always had. And that appears to be Matt Vierling and Jace Young, who are at the top of the list of winners of this, lack of a transaction, because number one, Jace Young is going to get plenty of run. I would think plenty of run in the major leagues, which I'm curious to see how he does. There's going to be a little bit of a rallying cry for Jace Young. It's like the bat, and then we'll kind of see about fielding. Matt Vierling is probably the biggest winner if you look at Tigers Twitter right now, because it's like, screw Bregman, we don't need him. We got Matt Vierling, and here's a highlight of a walk-off home run in the City Connect jerseys. And look, Vierling's a good player. And I think you and I have been higher on Bregman for longer than most in our space. But it's not a pivot. It's all right, this is what we got now, and we got to go. And are you comfortable with that is the question for fans, and that's the question for the front office and the coaching staff.
I am curious. The Tigers could still do something if they wanted to. I'm not sure there's a move that actually makes sense, but the reality that I keep pointing to, the Tigers need a right-handed bat. They had a 660 OPS against left-handed pitching last season. That ranked, I think, 24th or 25th in the league. You look at this lineup on paper, just what one more bat could do for you. The problem is there just isn't a great option out there. Ken Rosenthal reported the Cubs' interest in Justin Turner, and the Tigers are also mentioned in that story. Justin Turner is 40. He has played, I believe, 12 games, 12 games at third base over the past 2 years. 758 OPS against lefties last year. Wouldn't make a lot of sense. Wouldn't seem to fit the Tigers' modus operandi at this point, but who knows? They signed Gio Urshela last year. And then the name that I'm sure people are going to mention is Nolan Arenado. I've not heard any whispers of the Tigers being interested in Arenado since November, but for that to even be a conversation starter, Arenado would have to be willing to waive that no trade. Obviously, there are concerns about the declines in his bat speed, the declines in his game, but I kind of hope the Tigers circle back and kick the tires on that, just because it would be fun and interesting. But I don't know. In the past, Arenado seems to have made pretty clear he has no interest in Detroit. You could argue the best thing to do is roll with Matt Vierling and Jace Young. Matt Vierling was a 3-win player last year. He he was pretty good. But the other thing that comes to mind is there's kind of this narrative now that like, oh, Matt Vierling's your third baseman. And I don't think that's true because I just think there's still going to be a lot more playing time in right field for Matt Vierling, theoretically, where he is a better defender. Jace Young would make a lot of sense at third base, or even a fun exercise. Try to draw up the Tigers lineup against left-handed pitching. You're going to want Andy Ibanez in that lineup. Andy Ibanez ain't going to start at second because you have Gleyber Torres. Would you rather have Andy at third or the outfield? Would you rather have Vierling in right, Andy at third, or vice versa? I'm going to Andy at third, Vierling in right. And then against right-handed pitching, we'll see. I think Zach McKinstry, if he ends up on this roster, is going to get some run at third base. Jace Young, of course, could be the primary guy against right-handed pitching if he makes that team. I'm sure Vierling will play some third, but I don't think we should be referring to him as the third baseman.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought exercise, and I saw you do it on X. And yeah, to me, it's not much of a conversation against lefties. You're putting Ibanez at third and Vierling in right. That doesn't seem like I don't have to spend that much cognitive energy on that. And the Matt Vierling piece of this, I'm going to his stats right now. He was a 2.8 offensive WAR player last year, according to Baseball Reference, and a 0.3 defensive WAR. So stands to reason that higher in right field or center field, and then a little bit lower at third base. But he made some plays at third base. It's not like he's
started looking pretty good at third toward the end of the year. Don't think it's his natural position, but he was making some plays over there.
I think you can feel comfortable with him at third base. Certainly more comfortable with that alignment than vice versa with the Ibanez Vierling piece of this. And I keep coming back to the fact that I wish we had better indications of how the brass felt about Jace Young.
I know.
Because I
think they don't like him that much because they have not come out and said much, positively about him.
Yeah, and because I agreed. Like, I went through a lot of options, and I try to fight the whole "you feel better about what you got" thing than otherwise. But I didn't. I was like, is this combo? Am I more comfortable with this? And what the cost would this be? Like, we'll just throw Nolan in there. He's 34. He's gonna make 21 million, 16, 15 after that the next 2 years. So actually not a lot of money toward the end of that contract, but at the same time, you're talking about a player who's already steadily declined. I try to talk myself into, is it better to just acquire Nolan that's going to cost you nothing, and you'll probably get the Cardinals to throw in some money with it as well, and just kind of be like, we at least got to be really good at one defensive position, right? Like, we got to be really good at one defensive position, and then you hope you can unlock something in the bat. I went through that exercise, but I kept coming back to, I just don't know if I want to limit Vierling, and I still want to figure out what the hell is in Jace Young's bat. And the whole point of the Bregman thing, in my mind, was you could do both. You could do all three of those things if you signed Bregman to a contract with an opt-out after 1 year, or just what the Red Sox signed him for. So yeah, is the grass always greener? I don't know. It feels odd to not add anybody, but you can tell me the options that you would like that are available at present moment. Most of the time I kind of come back to, like, let's see what Jace has. We're going to throw Andy in there probably a lot more than we have before, and that's okay. It would have been a lot of fun to see this team with Alex Bregman in the infield there, with what he brings offensively, defensively, veteran presence, all that. But I always thought they weren't desperate, but then they offered 6 for 171. So maybe they weren't desperate.
That's a sign that they really wanted him, and they really wanted him because they know they needed him.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So let me run down a list, Cody, of the Bregman sweepstakes aftermath, winners and losers. I'll do winners first, and some of this we've already talked about, but I want to kind of list them out here a little bit. Jace Young, Matt Vierling, like I said, Matt Vierling is the rallying cry of the fan base right now from because he's not afraid to let his emotions show on the field. So there's a lot of great highlights you can show. It's like, yeah, that's our guy. I said Nolan Arenado's a winner because now he's kind of the belle of the ball of these like established third basemen that are some level.
He wanted to go to Boston. He wanted to go to Boston. He can't go to Boston anymore. Maybe he's a loser. Bregman goes to Detroit. I think Arenado would be where he wanted to be with the Red Sox.
Maybe he is a loser, but at least PR wise, right now he's a winner. I put Scott Harris and Chris Ilitch. Like I said, they show the want to do something. At least perception wise. Maybe I'll say their perception. They showed the notion to do something that we weren't sure was really in the cards. And I put pretty much anybody that has that's near the top of the system that has capability of playing third base is a winner right now because injuries are going to happen, and you might get your shot here. Which, if Bregman signed for 6/171, seemed less likely. So
and Hao-Yu Lee is someone no one's really talking about. I mean, he's not going to be ready to start the season, but by July, August, he certainly could be. I don't think it's coincidence he began playing some third base last year. Some of the other names you mentioned, Chris Ilitch, guy's definitely a winner here. Anyone who says Chris Ilitch is cheap, he can point to, well, I signed Javy and I signed Eduardo, and then the next time we were ready to spend, I made what could have been a winning offer for Alex Bregman. The guy's shown an adequate level of investment in this baseball team, the Bregman offer. Again, kind of blown everyone's mind by the fact they went 6 years. Scott Harris is really the tough one here because I don't know if he burned the quarter zips or not, Kieran, but he went 6 years. He did it. I don't know the dynamics of how all this played out, but he did it. He was aggressive with the Scott Boras client, and yet he lost. Signing Bregman would have been probably the defining move of his tenure, whether it went great or it went poorly. That is what he would probably largely be judged on. Missing on Bregman, we may not talk about as much 3, 4, 5 years from now, but he also missed the chance maybe to kind of have a crowning achievement or something that could just accelerate the Tigers' path to winning a World Series. So, unfortunately, I think it's a loss for Scott Harris. Doesn't mean he didn't try. Doesn't mean he didn't do a good job. Sometimes the quote I keep mentioning, it's not a try-hard league, and there are no moral victories here. Now you just are where you are. And you throw A.J. Hinch in that too. This is his old player, someone surely he probably did his best recruiting effort for, someone I think he desperately wanted. He's not going to be able to publicly come out and say much about that, given he's got 26 other guys in the clubhouse he's loyal to. But I think A.J. Hinch really wanted Alex Bregman. So ultimately, I had a feeling he didn't wake up with a good taste in his mouth Thursday morning.
Scott Harris and A.J. Hinch are at the top of my loser column as well. For the reasons that you just laid out. Scott Harris, in my opinion, is a winner and a loser. Just because he's not a loser, but just because it's a win or loss business, you didn't get him, so you can't just be on the winning side. So he's on there. Infield defense, going back to that Nolan comment I made, that's a loser right now. And also outfield defense is a little bit of a loser because now Matt Vierling's talents are going to be more split than they otherwise would be, right? Because if he's in the outfield more, he's a really good defender there. So there's you go. Defense takes a step back, and related to that, Joey Cora is a loser, not only because now he has a less talented infield to work with defensively. He lost to his brother, and you and I both have brothers. You don't want to lose to your brother. So Joey Cora is a loser. The perception of the Tigers takes a little bit of a hit, and now it's perception of the Tigers or perception of Comerica Park. However you want to talk yourself in and out of that weave, is that you lost out to the Boston Red Sox on what you could say is a better deal. I would take Red Sox deal, like I said, but more years, more more guaranteed money, blah blah blah. You lost out there, and if Comerica is really a hindrance, if you believe that, this would be evidence for that. And then lastly, I am a loser because as this process went out or played out, I thought that I was hoping it would be like a noon Eastern Sunday announcement. There's no more football. There's nothing really anything going on. NBA All-Star games later that day, whatever. And that would mean that I could do a podcast with you, Cody, and I wouldn't have to go do something with my in-laws. So I was kind of hoping for that. Now that's taken away from me, and so therefore I am a loser.
Well, I think this is the final time we will devote the bulk of an episode to Alex Bregman. Once again, I think I'm about out of Alex Bregman thoughts. We're already at 25 minutes here. Do you want to get on to a couple other topics real quick?
Yeah, let's move on to somebody who did choose you. You being the Tigers.
A big signing, John Brebbia.
John Brebbia, the signing that was announced to divert our attention from what was about to go down.
I was deep looking up John Brebbia fastball stats
So this is actually a relatively complicated contract for like a. It
really is. I can't even do it off the top of my head.
It's like it could be worth up to $14 million over 2 years or something like that. I think I read.
There's a lot of incentives for.
There's a lot of incentives
games pitched and games finished, which would hint like could he be a closer? Seems like a stretch, but maybe they just threw that in there to appease the agents. Like I don't know. It's an interesting contract. Basically 1 year club option for a second year. Brebbia was pretty bad, ERA in the 5s and 55 innings last year, but he was with Scott Harris with the Giants. Misses a lot of bats, so gets that swing and miss component in the bullpen. His slider, he still throws almost 50% of the time. It was horrible last year, negative 18 run value. But the Tigers signed him, I think, largely because they really like his fastball. Gets a lot of in-zone whiffs, grades out really well in the stuff plus plots that I continue to mention. I think they want him to pump that fastball in there and maybe make some other slight tweaks to the arsenal. Brebbia is a funny guy. I met him. I asked him what tweaks might be in store, and he said, "Well, I was trying to throw left-handed, and it didn't go very well." So, guy's got a sense of humor. He seems great. My one question here, like I get the signing, like it's not sexy. My one thing is just kind of like, do they need him? Because this was already going to be a pretty fierce bullpen competition, and now you bring in this guy who's a little bit of a project, and it's going to occupy a spot from, maybe the chances of us seeing a Casey Mize or Matt Manning convert to a reliever and maybe become very good in that role seem to diminish it a little bit with this. So I have no problem with the Brebbia signing. I'm kind of interested to see what he will become. But even though you can never have enough pitching, I don't know. Like, I just didn't really think the Tigers needed another reliever unless it was going to be like a high-powered established closer type.
Yeah, and obviously it's not like huge money, but to be honest, at this point with camp already starting and being like any signing that Scott Harris makes like over like $1 million in the bullpen, I'm going to be like, oh, they must really like this guy. Because again, I would like you thought like there certainly wasn't a need with a capital N, but like it must have been like a signing of opportunity more so than just like trying to fill a spot. And it's going to be and I think fans should have a blind faith in like when they bring somebody in the bullpen. Dogs agree when they bring somebody in the bullpen that they have an idea and a specific use for a guy like this. Speaking of bringing in pitching, though, also got Jack Flaherty. We heard from Jack Flaherty for the first time, seeing him. Cody, I swear it was just this time last year. It felt like last year he was wearing the number 9 and pitching in Lakeland, and it didn't seem that long ago that he was doing that. But Jack Flaherty is back, and we heard from him. What's Jack Flaherty like right now on the return?
Jack is Jack. Jack stays himself. I asked him why free agency was hard, and he said, "I could tell you, but I won't. There's a lot of dumb reasons that don't really make any sense. I say the business is the business, but some of it wasn't real business-like." I don't really know what that means. I wish he would just tell me the real reasons, because now I'm interested. What do you mean it wasn't business-like? They like assault your character or something? So I don't know, but we did hear from Jack. Obviously, he's happy to be back in Detroit. He was frustrated with free agency, but I think he's at peace with how it ended up and seems ready to make the most of things here with the Tigers.
And he became a little bit more crucial because sometimes things just go ahead and work out.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Cobb, if there was no Flaherty signing, how and then you miss out on Alex Bregman, and it's the same week that that they announced Cobb is going to be out for a bit. He's not going to be ready for opening day. That was the first. Maybe that should have been the omen that just like maybe good things weren't going to happen this week. But hopefully he's all right. But this was a concern just in general that something like this could happen. And then you read the explanation. It's not the most endearing of situations that makes you think, oh yeah, this will be all right. For the
No, I mean, this is a guy with a history of basically every injury you can think of, and he's had surgery on both hips. I kind of chuckled when the injury report popped up and Alex Cobb was on there. Said he got a PRP injection. Didn't really know what that meant. We asked AJ Hinch, and it was like, well, yeah, he has to rest, basically shut down for 7 or 8 days. The anti-inflammatory properties of the shot kick in, and then you kind of have to build up from zero. So he's going to be set back a month, which means he's not going to be ready to throw a full workload by opening day. He's almost certainly going to begin opening day on the injured list, which is not a great way to start the Alex Cobb era. I never had a problem with this signing. I think he can be pretty good if he's healthy, but that was always the question. If he's healthy, and he's not starting off healthy, a little bit concerning, but Jackson Jobe stock is back, baby. Just when we were ready to take Jackson Jobe out of the rotation, another spot opens. Kenta Maeda coming in built up, throwing hard in his bullpen. I'm telling you, I think they're going to give it a run. Another guy, man, just watching bullpens, it means nothing, but it's still kind of hard to quit Casey Mize. So if you wanted a reason to option Jackson Jobe, it's the guy who used to be the shiny new prospect.
Yeah, the guy used to be Jackson Jobe. And then speaking of things that don't matter and overreaction city, and it's just kind of fun to talk about because we all acknowledge it doesn't matter. Spencer Torkelson hit a home run today in batting practice, and I think it's a sign of things to come. No, I'm just kidding. But we see Spencer Torkelson. He's back, and I bring this up just basically because I want to know like where is his mind at, and what is a mountain to climb in order to be an impact player in the major leagues this year. And if you want to go extreme, like potentially period, that's kind of stakes that we have here. He has a quote in there about not wanting to watch video that's circulating around. Your impression of seeing Spencer Torkelson for the first time since his demotion?
Yeah, I mean, he seemed in pretty good spirits. He said, I think at least he was real about the situation and real about the fact he hasn't performed consistently and seems to like understands his state in the organization rather than being in denial about it. But I was actually talking to Colt Keith for the duration or the majority of Spencer Torkelson's scrum, so I wasn't there for the whole thing. I will have to one day reveal the secrets of the contents of my Colt Keith interview. The Torkelson, yeah, I wasn't there when he said the quote about like not watching video and stuff. I don't like. This is a guy who for a long time has needed to get out of his own head, and I think he was just trying to say like, yeah, I'm trying to consume less information and just play. But he said it in a poor way where he was bound to get roasted, and I'm sure the Tigers coaches saw that and said, dude, like, come on, you're going to have to watch like a little bit of video. In a way, you could cut the guy some slack. In a way, it's just been a frustrating run for Spencer Torkelson. I guess cool that, he thinks he's maybe can play a little looser, maybe not be locked on the iPad the whole time, but also in a way like, I don't know. No way for that quote to look good, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, my thought on that was like, I care less about you watching video than people watching video of you and being able to instruct you. You see what I'm saying?
It's a good way.
So that was my interpretation. It was never gonna especially in
I
a little player. It was never gonna
try
play
to
well.
go to him and follow up on this a little bit. Or Torque, if you want to come on Tiger territory,
yeah, more than welcome. More than welcome. We can talk about Big 12 football now that Arizona State's in the Big 12. So, so yeah, I thought like I didn't think that was that big a deal, to be honest. But it was like right for social media, just right for it. And last little nugget here, we're looking at, because we didn't know this for sure, Javier Baez, your opening day starting shortstop. Seems like could be a thing. Could be a thing.
Seems entirely possible. It might depend on who the Dodgers want to pitch opening day and what hand they throw with. I don't. Maybe they're going to try to get all they can out of Javi Baez. I have a hard time envisioning him being like an everyday shortstop. It sounds like they think he can be healthy and ready to be on the opening day roster. Javi's not yet reported to camp, but he will soon, and then we can get some Javi Baez takes that I'm sure will be ripe for social media.
Absolutely. All right. Well, this was awesome, Cody. It's the end of a chapter of Tiger Territory. Basically, really, the entirety of Tiger Territory's existence has been speculating about Alex Bregman, because we started this vertical of the podcast right after the season ended. So that chapter closed, and we can move on with our lives. We'll see what what's in store for the next chapter. You can follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Cody Stavenhagen. I am at Kieran _Steckley. Pod page is at Tiger Territory _. Follow us on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and we will get this thing fired up as spring training is officially underway. So for Cody Stavenhagen, I'm Kieran Steckley. Everybody have a great weekend.